Hi, I'm Samantha Miller, 32 years old, and until last month, I was supposed to be the best woman at my brother Jason's wedding. We've always been close, so when his fiancée Tiffany came into the picture, I was thrilled for him. That is, until I received that text from the wedding planner Melinda, "Your family canceled your invitation, but keep the $50,000 deposit." My heart dropped. I immediately called Jason, but it went straight to voicemail. Something wasn't right about Tiffany and her wealthy family, but I never expected this. Before I dive into this nightmare, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, hit subscribe, and join me on this wild wedding journey that changed my life forever. Growing up, Jason and I were more than just siblings, we were each other's anchors. Only 5 years apart, we navigated our parents' messy divorce together when I was 15 and he was 10. While our parents were busy fighting over assets and pointing fingers, Jason and I created our own little support system. I helped him with homework, attended his Little League games, and made sure he never felt alone. In return, he was my biggest cheerleader, leaving encouraging sticky notes on my mirror before big tests and defending me fiercely against neighborhood bullies despite being younger. After college, Jason flourished as a software engineer at a promising startup. He was smart, hardworking, and genuinely kind, qualities that made me incredibly proud to be his sister. When he called me 2 years ago, practically shouting through the phone about meeting someone special at a charity gala his company sponsored, I was ecstatic for him. "Sam, she's amazing," he gushed. "Tiffany Blackwell. She runs her family's foundation, and she's brilliant and beautiful and somehow agreed to go out with me." The first time I met Tiffany, I understood Jason's infatuation. She was strikingly gorgeous with long blonde hair, perfect makeup, and clothes that screamed old money without trying too hard. Her laugh was musical, her posture impeccable, and she looked at Jason with what seemed like genuine affection. Still, something felt slightly off about her perfectly polished demeanor, though I chalked it up to my own insecurities. A month into their relationship, we were invited to dinner at the Blackwell estate, a sprawling mansion in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city. The driveway alone was longer than my entire street, lined with perfectly manicured topiaries and ending at a circular fountain that probably cost more than my annual salary. William and Victoria Blackwell greeted us with practiced smiles and firm handshakes. William, tall and distinguished with silver hair, immediately launched into questions about Jason's career trajectory and investment portfolio. Victoria, who looked like an older version of Tiffany with the same blonde hair and athletic build, assessed me with cool blue eyes. "Samantha, Tiffany mentioned you work in marketing, was it?" she asked, somehow making my successful career sound like a hobby. "Yes, I'm a marketing executive at Morris & Klein," I replied, trying not to sound defensive. "How quaint," she responded, before turning to ask the server to bring more wine. Throughout that dinner, I became acutely aware of my department store dress among their designer clothes, my sensible car parked among their luxury vehicles, and my state college education versus their Ivy League pedigrees. The Blackwells moved through life at a different altitude, one where summer was a verb, where personal assistants handled life's inconveniences, and where family names opened doors I didn't even know existed. Despite feeling like an outsider, I smiled and engaged, wanting to support Jason, who was clearly trying to impress Tiffany's family. He shot me grateful glances whenever I smoothed over awkward moments or redirected uncomfortable questions about our family's divorce. After a year of dating, Jason called me in the middle of a workday, something he rarely did. "Sam, I'm doing it. I'm proposing to Tiffany next weekend," he said, his voice a mix of excitement and terror. "Will you help me pick out the ring?" I'm completely lost. We spent Saturday morning visiting jewelers, and I watched my pragmatic brother transform into someone willing to spend 3 months' salary on a diamond the size of a small marble. When he asked if it was too much, I swallowed my financial concerns and told him, if she's the one, then it's perfect. When Tiffany said yes, Jason called me first. I could hear the relief and joy in his voice, and I pushed aside my lingering reservations. My brother was happy. That was what mattered. The wedding planning began immediately, with Tiffany's mother taking charge. The venue was a historic mansion with sprawling gardens. The guest list quickly grew to 300 people, most of whom Jason had never met. The estimated budget passed $250,000, a figure that made me gasp when Jason mentioned it casually over coffee. "That's a lot," I said carefully. "Are you comfortable with that? I can contribute something if it would help." Jason shook his head. Tiffany's parents insisted on covering everything. Apparently, this is actually modest compared to her cousin's wedding last year. He laughed, but I noticed a tightness around his eyes. "And you're okay with all this?" I pressed gently. "Of course. It's important to Tiffany, and her family has traditions. Besides, her dad said something about this being an investment in connections, whatever that means," he shrugged. When Jason asked me to be his best woman, I was touched beyond words. It was so perfectly us, breaking tradition to honor our bond. Tiffany seemed less enthusiastic. "Are you sure you want to do that?" I overheard her asking Jason. "It's not really traditional, and the photos would look so unbalanced. Plus, would Sam even be comfortable in that role? She's not exactly wedding party material." That comment stung, but when Jason insisted, Tiffany acquiesced with a tight smile. "Of course, if it's important to you. We'll make it work somehow." Looking back, I should have recognized that moment as the first real warning sign. But I was determined to support my brother's happiness, even if it meant dealing with a bridezilla and her intimidating family. I had no idea just how dark this fairy tale wedding would become. The first major crack in the wedding facade appeared during bridesmaid dress shopping. Tiffany had arranged for all 7 bridesmaids to meet at an exclusive bridal boutique downtown, the kind with champagne service and private fitting rooms larger than my bedroom. As the only non-socialite in the group, I felt immediately out of place among Tiffany's friends who all seemed to know each other from prep schools, country clubs, or family connections. "Ladies, this is Sam, Jason's sister," Tiffany introduced me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The other women, Madison, Caitlin, Ashley, Brittany, Lauren, and Harper, gave me polite nods before returning to their conversations about recent vacations in Santorini and weekend homes in the Hamptons. While waiting for my turn to try on dresses, I overheard Tiffany in the next fitting room, speaking to Madison in a hushed but audible tone. "I know, it's awkward having her here. She's nothing like Jason, no polish, no style. But what could I do?" "He insisted she be included," Tiffany sighed dramatically. "At least we convinced him to drop that ridiculous best woman idea. Can you imagine her in a suit standing next to the groomsmen? Disaster." Madison laughed. "Well, at least she's thin. We can put her at the end of the line in photos and crop her out if needed." My cheeks burned with humiliation, but I forced myself to remain composed. This day wasn't about me, it was about Jason. When the consultant, Vivian, pulled me aside to discuss dresses, her expression shifted subtly as she looked at my simple blouse and jeans. "Tiffany has selected Marchesa for the bridal party," she informed me, her French accent making the designer name sound even more exclusive. "The gowns begin at $3,000. Will that be an issue?" $3,000. That was my monthly rent. I swallowed hard. "That's more than I expected to spend on a dress I'll wear once," I admitted quietly. Vivian's smile tightened. "Perhaps you should discuss this with the bride. We do have payment plans available for those with budget concerns." When I pulled Tiffany aside to discuss the cost, her perfectly shaped eyebrows rose in surprise. "Oh, I assumed you knew. Everything in this wedding is top tier," she said dismissively. "If it's really a problem, I'm sure Jason would be happy to cover it for you. After all, it's his big day too." The suggestion that I should ask my younger brother to pay for my bridesmaid dress stung, but I didn't want to create drama. Later, when I mentioned the situation to Jason over lunch, he immediately offered to pay. "Don't worry about it, Sam." "It's no big deal," he insisted, but I noticed he checked his banking app before making the offer. "Jason, that's not the point. $3,000 for a bridesmaid dress is excessive, and Tiffany made me feel like I was being difficult for questioning it." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "A nervous habit from childhood. Tiffany comes from a different world, Sam. This is normal for her. Please, just go with it." For me, I reluctantly agreed, but our usual easy rapport felt strained. Over the following weeks, Jason became increasingly difficult to reach. My texts went unanswered for days, and our weekly coffee meetups were repeatedly canceled due to wedding planning emergencies. The bridal shower was another exercise in discomfort. Held at the Blackwell Country Club, the event featured a 5-course lunch, a champagne fountain, and gifts that made my carefully handcrafted memory book for Tiffany look painfully inadequate. I'd spent weeks collecting photos of Jason growing up, adding heartfelt stories and welcome messages to the family. When Tiffany opened it, she flipped through the pages quickly and said, "How creative," before setting it aside to exclaim over a crystal vase from one of her sorority sisters. Victoria Blackwell cornered me by the dessert table later, champagne flute in hand. "Samantha, dear, Jason mentioned you'll be attending the wedding solo? No +1. "That's right," I confirmed, taking a large bite of cake to avoid elaborating. "Such a shame. A woman your age should be focused on finding a partner. Perhaps after the wedding, we could introduce you to some suitable men from our circle? With a little effort on your appearance and some social polishing, you might have potential." I nearly choked on my cake. "I'm quite happy with my life as it is, but thank you for your concern," I replied as evenly as possible. Victoria patted my arm condescendingly. "Of course you'd say that, dear. Pride is easier than change. By the way, have you sorted out your contribution to the wedding fund?" "The $50,000 family deposit?" "Excuse me." I blinked in confusion. This is the first I'm hearing about any deposit. Oh, Victoria's perfect eyebrows rose. "I assumed Jason had discussed this with you. Traditionally, both families contribute. Since your parents are unavailable, we expected you would handle the Miller family portion. It's quite standard, really." Before I could respond, she was called away by the event planner, leaving me stunned and confused. Jason had explicitly told me that the Blackwells were covering all wedding costs. Why was Victoria suggesting I owed money? When I finally managed to speak with Jason the next day, he seemed uncomfortable and quickly changed the subject. "Don't worry about what Victoria said. It's all being handled," he assured me. A week later, I received an email about wedding party roles, only to discover that my position had been changed from best woman to bridesmaid, without any discussion. When I called Jason, Tiffany answered his phone. "Oh, Sam. Yes, we had to make some adjustments for symmetry in the ceremony. Jason meant to tell you, but we've been so busy. You understand, right? It's actually better this way, less pressure on you." As the weeks passed, I felt increasingly sidelined in my own brother's wedding. The final blow came when I learned through social media that my scheduled speech at the reception had been assigned to Tiffany's father instead. The brother I'd grown up with was disappearing before my eyes, absorbed into the Blackwell family vortex, and I was being systematically pushed out of the picture. 3 months before the wedding, I received a text from Rachel, a mutual friend who had known Jason and me since college. "Hey, did you know they moved up the wedding? Just got my new save the date for June instead of August. Weird they didn't mention it to you first." I stared at my phone in disbelief. The wedding date had been changed by 2 months, and no one had bothered to tell me? I immediately checked my mail. Nothing. My email. Nothing. I even checked my spam folder, thinking perhaps the new save the dates had been sent electronically. Nothing. When I finally reached Jason, he sounded distracted and vaguely apologetic. "Oh yeah, Tiffany's grandmother is having surgery in August, so we moved things up. Sorry, I thought you knew. Tiffany said she'd update the wedding party. Jason, I'm your sister and supposedly a bridesmaid. How could you not tell me directly that your wedding date changed?" "I've been swamped, Sam." The venue change was a nightmare, and Tiffany's been stressed about the accelerated timeline. "Look, I've got to run to a cake tasting. We'll catch up soon, okay?" He hung up before I could respond, leaving me with a growing sense of unease. The following weekend was supposedly the bachelor and bachelorette parties, a joint affair at a winery followed by separate evening celebrations. I learned about it only when I saw Instagram stories posted by Rachel. When I texted her in confusion, she replied, "I assumed you were invited but couldn't make it." That's what Tiffany told everyone when someone asked where you were. My hands shook as I dialed Tiffany's number. For once, she answered promptly. "Sam, how are you?" Her voice was syrupy sweet. "Tiffany, why wasn't I invited to the bachelor and bachelorette weekend?" I asked directly. "What?" Of course you were invited. I sent all the bridesmaids an email weeks ago. Are you saying you didn't get it? She sounded genuinely surprised, but something felt off. Oh my gosh, it must have gone to spam. I'm so sorry. I even mentioned to Jason that we hadn't heard back from you, but he said you were probably just busy with work. You do work such long hours. The gaslighting was so smooth that for a moment, I questioned my own sanity. Had I somehow missed an invitation? But a quick search through every folder in my email confirmed no such invitation existed. The final dress fitting was scheduled for the following week. When I arrived at the boutique, the same consultant, Vivian, greeted me with confusion. Ms. Miller? We weren't expecting you today. Your fitting is not on the schedule. There must be a mistake. All bridesmaids are scheduled for final fittings today, I insisted, showing her the text confirmation on my phone. Vivian disappeared into the back room and returned looking uncomfortable. I'm sorry, but it appears your dress order was canceled 3 weeks ago. Canceled? By whom? She hesitated before responding. According to our records, the bride called to remove one bridesmaid dress from the order. Your measurements are no longer in our system. My stomach dropped as I scrolled through my phone to find Tiffany's number. Before I could call, a text from her appeared. Sam, so sorry about the mix-up at the boutique. There was a miscommunication with the orders. Don't worry, we'll rush order your dress from another designer. These things happen with weddings. Instead of responding, I drove straight to Jason's apartment. After knocking repeatedly, he finally opened the door, looking surprised to see me. Behind him, I could see suitcases open on the floor, clothes neatly folded inside. Sam, what are you doing here? My bridesmaid dress was canceled, Jason. The boutique said Tiffany removed me from the order 3 weeks ago. I pushed past him into the apartment. And now you're packing? For what? Another wedding event I haven't been told about. He had the decency to look embarrassed. It's just a pre-wedding trip with Tiffany's family to their lake house. A chance to relax before the final wedding push. And let me guess, I wasn't invited to this either? Jason sighed, sitting heavily on the couch. Look, Sam, Tiffany thought it would be easier if you weren't in the wedding party. She feels you haven't been committed to the process. Missing meetings, not responding to emails I never received. Events I was never told about. I interrupted, my voice rising. Jason, can't you see what's happening? They're isolating you from me, from your life before them. That's not fair, he protested weakly. Tiffany just wants things to be perfect. She thinks your situation might be distracting. My situation? What does that mean? He looked down at his hands. You know, your commitment issues. Being single, focusing so much on work. Tiffany thinks you might feel uncomfortable being paired with her cousin Bradley for the procession since you don't have a date. I was speechless. My successful career and independent life were being framed as character flaws. While Jason continued making excuses, I noticed a wedding planning binder on his coffee table. Flipping it open, I found a seating chart for the head table. My name had been crossed out, with Family Table 2 written beside it in neat handwriting. Jason, I said quietly, turning the binder toward him. I'm not even sitting at the head table anymore. When were you planning to tell me that? Before he could answer, my phone chimed with an email notification from Melinda Barnes, the wedding planner, with the subject line, Urgent, Family Deposit Confirmation. The email from Melinda Barnes was brief but baffling. Dear MS. Miller, this is a final reminder that the family contribution deposit of $50,000 is due by Friday to secure all vendors. Please confirm payment method. Best regards, Melinda Barnes, Elite Events. I stared at my phone in confusion. What family contribution? Jason had repeatedly assured me that the Blackwells were covering all wedding expenses. Jason, why is the wedding planner asking me for $50,000? I demanded, showing him the email. He paled visibly, taking the phone from my hand and reading the message twice. There must be some mistake. Let me call Melinda. But before he could dial, I took my phone back. No, I'll call her myself. Right now. Melinda answered on the second ring, her voice professionally cheerful. Elite Events, Melinda speaking. Hi Melinda, this is Samantha Miller, Jason's sister. I just received your email about a family deposit, and I'm confused because this is the first I'm hearing about it. There was a pause before she responded. Oh, I see. Let me check our records. I could hear keyboard clicking in the background. According to our paperwork, you were designated as the financial guarantor for the Miller family contribution 3 months ago. I have the signed agreement right here. That's impossible. I never signed anything. I'm looking at the document now, Ms. Miller. It has your signature dated February 12th. My heart raced. Can you please email me a copy of this document right now? While waiting for the email, I glared at Jason, who was pacing nervously, running his hands through his hair repeatedly. Tell me you didn't forge my signature on a financial agreement, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Sam, it's complicated, he began, but was interrupted by my phone chiming with Melinda's email. The document showed a perfect replica of my signature on a contract agreeing to provide $50,000 as the Miller family contribution to the wedding expenses. I recognized it immediately as copied from a birthday card I'd given Jason months earlier. What the hell, Jason? I whispered, feeling physically ill. You forged my signature for $50,000? Money you know I don't have? I didn't forge anything, he protested, then immediately backtracked. I mean, Tiffany said it was just a formality. That her parents would actually cover it, but they needed someone from my side to be listed for symmetry in the planning documents. She promised it was just paperwork. So you let your fiancé forge my signature on a legally binding financial document? Do you realize that's fraud? Jason sat down heavily, his face in his hands. I didn't know they were actually going to ask you for the money. Tiffany said what? That it was okay to commit fraud using my name? That it was fine to put me on the hook for money I never agreed to pay. The apartment door opened, and as if summoned by our argument, Tiffany walked in. She was impeccably dressed as always, but her expression hardened when she saw me. Sam. What a surprise, she said coolly. I thought we were meeting at 4, Jason. Tiffany, did you tell the wedding planner I agreed to pay $50,000 for your wedding? I asked directly. Instead of appearing shocked or apologetic, Tiffany merely sighed, setting her designer bag on the counter. I see we're having this conversation now. Yes, we're having this conversation now, I snapped. You forged my signature and committed fraud. That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? She rolled her eyes slightly. It's a wedding planning document, not a federal case. And honestly, I thought you'd want to contribute. After all, Jason is your only brother. Contribute? I was never even asked. And $50,000? That's more than my annual salary. Tiffany's perfectly manicured hand waved dismissively. Well, we assumed you had savings. Besides, the Blackwells are covering over $200,000. Your family should handle something. My family? I am his family. And neither of us has that kind of money. I turned to Jason, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. Did you know about this? Did you agree to this? Jason wouldn't meet my eyes. Tiffany and her parents kept saying it was traditional for both families to contribute. They made me feel like I wasn't bringing enough to the marriage already. Her dad kept making comments about Tiffany marrying down. So you offered up my finances instead of standing up for yourself? I couldn't keep the hurt from my voice. I was going to tell you, he mumbled. I just couldn't figure out how. Tiffany stepped between us. Look, Samantha, I've tried to include you in this wedding. I really have. But you've been difficult from day one. You question every decision, you don't fit in with our social circle, and frankly, your negative energy is stressing Jason out during what should be the happiest time of his life. My negative energy? I echoed in disbelief. You've systematically excluded me from every event, removed me from the wedding party without telling me, and committed fraud using my name. See? This is exactly what I mean, Tiffany said to Jason, as if I'd just proven her point. Always the drama, always making things about her. I looked at my brother, waiting for him to defend me, to recognize the manipulation happening right in front of him. Instead, he sighed deeply. Maybe Tiffany's right, Sam. Maybe it would be best if you weren't involved in the wedding. There's clearly too much tension, and we don't need any more stress right now. His words hit me like a physical blow. After everything we'd been through together, after all the years of supporting each other, he was choosing Tiffany's toxic influence over our relationship. Are you serious right now? I whispered. You're uninviting me from your wedding? It's not uninviting, Tiffany corrected smoothly. It's just recognizing that your presence might create unnecessary drama on our special day. I grabbed my purse, tears threatening to spill. I never thought I'd see the day when you'd choose someone like her over family, Jason. She's shown you exactly who she is, and you're still too blind to see it. As I headed for the door, Tiffany called after me. We'll still need that deposit by Friday, though. Contractually speaking. I slammed the door behind me, my hands shaking so badly I could barely press the elevator button. Before I reached the lobby, my phone chimed with a text from Melinda, the wedding planner. Your family canceled your invitation, but keep the $50,000 deposit. I spent the next 24 hours alternating between crying and staring numbly at my apartment ceiling. How had things gone so terribly wrong? The brother who had been my rock through our parents' divorce, who had helped me move into my first apartment, who had called me first with every major life update, was now a stranger under Tiffany's influence. When my friend Rachel called to check on me, I finally broke down and told her everything. Sam, this is insane, she gasped after hearing about the forged signature and financial demand. What they're doing isn't just mean, it's potentially illegal. Have you looked at your credit report recently? I hadn't, but Rachel's question sent a chill through me. If they were willing to forge my signature on one document, what else might they have done? That evening, I pulled my credit report and discovered 6 recent inquiries from various wedding vendors: the caterer, the florist, the rental company, the photographer, the videographer, and the venue itself. Someone had been using my personal information to apply for credit with multiple businesses. My hands shaking, I called my friend Michael, who worked as an attorney specializing in identity theft. Based on what you're telling me, this is textbook fraud, he confirmed after hearing the full story. They forged your signature, used your personal information without consent, and are now attempting to collect money based on fraudulent representations. You need to document everything and consider filing a police report. A police report? Against my own brother. The thought made me physically ill. Sam, I know he's your brother, but he's allowing his fiancée to commit crimes using your identity. This could impact your credit score, your financial future, and potentially even lead to legal problems for you if vendors start coming after you for unpaid bills. The following day, I began methodically gathering evidence: screenshots of the forged document, copies of the credit inquiries, text messages from Tiffany and Jason, and the emails from the wedding planner. Looking at it all laid out chronologically made the pattern of manipulation crystal clear. What hurt most wasn't the money or even the fraud. It was realizing that Tiffany had been systematically isolating Jason from me from the beginning. The brother I knew would never have allowed someone to treat his sister this way. The Jason I grew up with would have seen through Tiffany's manipulations immediately. For 2 days, I wrestled with what to do. Part of me wanted to walk away, to protect myself from further hurt. But another part, the part that had always looked out for my little brother, couldn't abandon him to a woman who had shown such calculated cruelty. On the 3rd day, I learned through social media that the Blackwells were hosting a pre-wedding dinner at their estate that evening, the dinner Jason had been packing for when I confronted him. All the wedding party and close family would be there. It would be my last chance to reach Jason before the wedding. I dressed carefully in a simple black dress, professional, dignified, and impossible to criticize. I loaded all my evidence onto a tablet and made one additional copy of everything on a USB drive. Then I drove to the Blackwell estate, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The security guard at the gate initially refused to let me in, saying my name wasn't on the guest list. But when I mentioned I had important legal documents regarding the wedding that needed immediate attention, he reluctantly called the house. To my surprise, I was granted access, likely because they thought I was bringing the signed deposit agreement. I parked my modest sedan among the luxury cars and took a deep breath before walking up to the imposing front door. A server in formal attire opened it before I could knock, and I could hear the murmur of conversation and tinkling of glasses from the dining room. My entrance caused an immediate hush to fall over the gathering. Around an elegantly set table sat the entire wedding party, the Blackwell family, and a few people I didn't recognize, likely important business associates or extended family. Jason's face drained of color when he saw me, while Tiffany's expression hardened into a mask of controlled anger. "Samantha, Victoria Blackwell broke the silence, her voice arctic. "We weren't expecting you." The invitation clearly stated formal attire. Her eyes flicked dismissively over my simple dress. "I wasn't invited," I replied calmly, remaining in the doorway. "But given that my name and financial information have been used without my consent for this wedding, I thought I should be present for at least one event." William Blackwell stood, his imposing height clearly meant to intimidate. "Young lady, if you're here about the family contribution, this is hardly the time or place." "I'm not here about money," I interrupted. "I'm here because fraud has been committed in my name, and I wanted to give everyone involved a chance to make this right before I'm forced to take legal action." The room erupted in murmurs. Jason half rose from his seat, his face a mixture of shame and alarm. "Sam, please, can we talk about this privately?" "We're past that point, Jason," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I've tried talking privately. Now I need everyone to understand exactly what's been happening." I moved to the head of the table and opened my tablet, projecting the screen onto the dining room wall using the built-in system I'd spotted upon entering, clearly used for business presentations during dinner parties. 3 months ago, this document was submitted to Elite Events wedding planners with what appears to be my signature. I began professionally, displaying the forged agreement. "I never saw this document before yesterday, and I certainly never signed it." Melinda Barnes, the wedding planner, was seated near Tiffany's mother. Her eyes widened as she looked between the document and me. "Furthermore, my personal information has been used to submit credit applications to 6 different wedding vendors without my knowledge or consent." I displayed the credit inquiry report. "And finally, I've been systematically excluded from wedding events while simultaneously being held financially responsible for them." Victoria Blackwell's perfect composure slipped slightly. "These are merely misunderstandings that can be cleared up. They're not misunderstandings," I cut in firmly. "They're deliberate actions taken primarily by your daughter, with my brother's complicity." Tiffany stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. "How dare you crash our dinner and make these ridiculous accusations? Jason, are you going to let her talk about me this way?" All eyes turned to my brother, who looked torn and miserable. For a moment, I saw a flash of the little boy who used to look up to his big sister, who trusted me to always tell him the truth. "Is it true?" he asked me quietly. "All of it." "Yes," I said simply. "I have all the evidence right here. Tiffany and possibly her parents have been using my financial information without consent while simultaneously pushing me out of your life." William Blackwell cleared his throat. "This is all very theatrical, but easily resolved. Name your price, Ms. Miller. Everyone has one." He pulled out a checkbook from his dinner jacket. 10,000? 20? "Let's settle this unfortunate misunderstanding now." The casual way he offered to buy me off, as if my relationship with my brother had a price tag, crystallized everything wrong with the Blackwells. They truly believed everything and everyone could be purchased. "My relationship with my brother isn't for sale," I stated firmly. "And attempting to bribe me only further demonstrates your family's character." Tiffany turned to Jason, her face a perfect mask of distress. "Are you going to let her ruin everything we've built? Everything we've planned?" "She's always been jealous of what we have, Jason. She's lonely and bitter and wants to destroy our happiness." Jason looked between us, clearly struggling. Then he stood and walked slowly to the projected document on the wall, studying the signature. "This is from the birthday card Sam gave me," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I recognize the little heart she always puts over the I in Miller." He turned to Tiffany. "You said this was just a formality. That your parents were covering everything. You promised me no one would actually ask Sam for money." "Of course we were going to ask her." Victoria interjected. "Why should we pay for everything? It's traditional for both families to contribute." "My family isn't wealthy," Jason replied, his voice growing stronger. "You've known that from the beginning. Sam works hard for every dollar she earns. She can't afford this, and you know it." Tiffany grabbed his arm. "Baby, we can discuss all this later. She's just trying to come between us like she always does." "No, Tiffany. Sam has never tried to come between us. In fact, she's bent over backward trying to support our relationship despite how poorly your family has treated her." Jason's voice was steady now, his spine straightening as if a weight was lifting. She's the most important person in my life, and I've let you push her away. I've let you manipulate me into hurting her. Well, if she's the most important person in your life, Tiffany spat, her beautiful face contorted with rage, then you've just made your choice very clear. It's her or me, Jason. Right now. The room went silent, everyone holding their breath. Jason looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in months. Then he slowly removed the platinum engagement ring from his finger and placed it gently on the table. I choose my sister, he said quietly. I choose the person who has loved me unconditionally my entire life. I choose the truth over whatever this is. He gestured around the opulent room. Tiffany's gasp was theatrical. You cannot be serious. After everything my family has done for you? After all we've invested in this relationship? That's just it, Jason replied sadly. It was always an investment to you. A transaction. You never really loved me for who I am. William Blackwell's face had turned an alarming shade of red. You'll regret this decision, young man. I was prepared to offer you opportunities you couldn't imagine. Connections that would have set you up for life. I'm sure I would have paid for those opportunities many times over, Jason responded, moving to stand beside me. Sam, I'm so sorry. Let's go home. As we walked out together, leaving behind the stunned silence of the Blackwell dining room, I heard Victoria's sharp voice, Melinda, cancel everything. Immediately. The wedding that had nearly destroyed our relationship was over before it began. The drive back to my apartment was initially silent. Jason stared out the passenger window, his profile illuminated by passing streetlights, looking simultaneously relieved and devastated. I kept my eyes on the road, processing the whirlwind of emotions from the confrontation at the Blackwell estate. I can't believe I just did that, Jason finally whispered, more to himself than to me. Are you okay? I asked, glancing over briefly. He let out a shaky laugh. No, not at all. I just ended my engagement in front of 30 people after discovering my fiancé committed fraud using my sister's identity. He ran his hands through his hair. But also, yes, I feel like I can breathe for the first time in months. When we arrived at my apartment, I made us both hot chocolate, our childhood comfort drink for difficult conversations. We sat on my worn but comfortable couch, mugs in hand, the weight of everything that had happened hanging between us. I need to apologize, Sam, Jason began, his voice thick with emotion. I let Tiffany come between us. I ignored the red flags, made excuses for her behavior, and worst of all, I didn't protect you from her manipulation. Why didn't you tell me about the financial pressure they were putting on you? I asked gently. Jason stared into his mug. At first, it was subtle. Comments about how generous they were being, hints that I should be contributing more. Then William started mentioning Tiffany's ex-boyfriends, how one bought her a car for her birthday, how another took her family to Bora Bora. The message was clear, I wasn't bringing enough to the table. So when they suggested I could contribute, you went along with it. He nodded miserably. Tiffany made it sound so reasonable. She said it was just a formality, that her parents would actually cover everything but needed your name on the documents for appearances. She promised no one would ever actually ask you for money. And you believed her. I wanted to believe her, he corrected. I was in so deep, Sam. The Blackwells represented everything I thought I wanted: success, connections, a place in their world. And Tiffany. He paused, searching for words. When she focused her attention on you, it was like being in the spotlight. She made me feel special, chosen. I couldn't see that the spotlight was actually a searchlight, finding all my insecurities and exploiting them. I reached over and squeezed his hand. The Blackwells are expert manipulators, Jason. They've had a lifetime of practice. That doesn't excuse what I did, he insisted. I knew using your signature was wrong. I knew excluding you from wedding events would hurt you. I chose to look the other way because confronting Tiffany meant possibly losing her. And I'd tied my whole future to her. What will you do now? I asked softly. Jason set down his mug and leaned back, looking suddenly exhausted. Honestly? I don't know. My apartment is filled with wedding gifts I'll have to return. Half my friends are Tiffany's friends. My job. He trailed off. Your job. I prompted, concerned. William got me an interview at his friend's tech firm. I was supposed to start there next month. Double the salary, corner office. He laughed bitterly. Another way they were buying control over my life. We talked late into the night, piecing together how completely the Blackwells had worked to integrate Jason into their world while systematically cutting ties to his past. They had introduced him to better friends, suggested more suitable hobbies, even encouraged him to reduce contact with our parents because their divorce was embarrassing. The next morning, Jason called Melinda Barnes to officially cancel the wedding and determine what financial obligations remained. To our shock, she informed us that all deposits were non-refundable, but she personally would ensure my name was removed from all documentation. For what it's worth, Ms. Miller, she added quietly, I had no idea the financial agreement wasn't legitimate. The Blackwells assured me everything was properly arranged. Over the following weeks, Jason moved out of his apartment, which held too many memories of Tiffany, and temporarily stayed in my spare room while he sorted out his life. We worked together to return wedding gifts, notify guests of the cancellation, and deal with the legal aftermath of the fraud committed in my name. The Blackwells, predictably, threatened legal action for wedding costs incurred, but backed down quickly when my attorney friend Michael sent a formal letter detailing the fraud and identity theft we were prepared to pursue charges for. In the end, they decided that distance from the situation was preferable to prolonged legal battles that might generate publicity. As word spread about what had happened, we received an unexpected outpouring of support. Several of Jason's friends confessed they had always felt something was off about Tiffany, but hadn't wanted to say anything. One of Jason's groomsmen, Derek, even admitted that Tiffany had tried to exclude him from the wedding party because she felt he was too working class for photos. 6 weeks after the dramatic dinner at the Blackwell estate, Jason received a job offer from a startup that had admired his work for years. No connections required, just recognition of his genuine talent. He found a new apartment, began rebuilding his confidence, and slowly returned to being the authentic person he had been before meeting Tiffany. You know what the strangest part is? He said to me over dinner one night. I'm not even sure I ever really loved Tiffany. I loved the idea of her, the status of being with her. But when I try to think of genuine moments of connection between us, I come up empty. The most surprising aftermath came when 2 of Tiffany's bridesmaids, Ashley and Lauren, reached out to me privately. Both had been friends with Tiffany since college and had witnessed similar patterns of manipulation in her previous relationships. She always targets men who are successful, but from different social backgrounds, Ashley explained during a coffee meeting. Men who will be dazzled by her world and willing to do anything to be accepted into it. Usually, she gets bored after a few months, but with Jason, it went further than ever before. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Lauren looked uncomfortable. Because we enabled it. We saw what was happening to your brother, to your relationship with him, and we said nothing. We've been doing that for years, and it's time someone stood up to the Blackwells and their daughter. Their honesty initiated an unexpected healing process, not just for Jason and me, but for others who had been damaged by the Blackwell family's toxic influence. Ashley and Lauren introduced us to 2 other former boyfriends of Tiffany's who had similar experiences of manipulation and financial exploitation. Together, we formed an informal support group for recovering from toxic relationships with wealthy, controlling partners. 3 months after the canceled wedding, Jason had lunch with Tiffany for closure. He returned looking thoughtful. She apologized, in her way, he told me. Said she got carried away with wedding excitement and might have crossed some lines. No real acknowledgement of the fraud or manipulation. Did you get the answers you needed? I asked. He nodded slowly. I think so. Mostly I realized I don't need her validation anymore. I don't need the Blackwell's world to feel successful or worthy. As summer turned to fall, Jason began dating again, this time with a much clearer understanding of what he wanted in a partner. He met Megan, a kindergarten teacher with a warm laugh and zero pretension, at a volunteer event. Their relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and genuine connection rather than dazzle and status. The first time he brought her to dinner at my place, I watched them interact with relief. There was no power dynamic, no manipulation, just 2 people enjoying each other's company. When Megan insisted on helping with dishes despite Jason's protests, teasing him about his terrible drying technique, I caught his eye across the kitchen and saw the contentment there. Meanwhile, my own career flourished in unexpected ways. The skills I developed documenting the Blackwell situation, organization, evidence gathering, clear communication during conflict, led to a promotion at work when a major client crisis needed similar handling. My boss was impressed by my ability to navigate complex interpersonal dynamics while maintaining professional boundaries. The experience with Tiffany and her family had been painful, but it had clarified what truly mattered in relationships and taught both Jason and me to recognize manipulation before it could take root. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come wrapped in the most difficult packages. 6 months after the wedding that never happened, Jason and I sat in our childhood backyard, sharing a bottle of wine with our parents. The autumn leaves created a canopy of red and gold above us, and the slight chill in the air was offset by the warmth of laughter and conversation. "I still can't believe you walked out of the Blackwell mansion with all those fancy people watching," our mother said, shaking her head in amazement. "My shy little boy standing up to Boston's elite." Jason smiled, the confidence that had been missing during his time with Tiffany now fully restored. "I had a good example," he said, raising his glass toward me. "Sam taught me what real loyalty looks like." Our father, who had flown in from Arizona specifically for this reunion, cleared his throat. "I owe you both an apology," he said seriously. "When your mother and I divorced, we were so caught up in our own drama that we failed to be the parents you deserved. You two raised each other in many ways, and you did a damn fine job of it." "We did okay," I agreed, looking at my brother with pride. The past 6 months had been a journey of rebuilding, not just Jason's life, but our relationship, which had been tested in ways we never imagined. After leaving the Blackwells behind, Jason had committed to therapy, working through the manipulation he'd experienced and examining why he had been vulnerable to it in the first place. His therapist helped him recognize how his insecurities about not being good enough had made him susceptible to Tiffany's tactics. "It's like I was wearing Tiffany-colored glasses," he explained during one of our weekly coffee meetups. "I couldn't see her clearly because I was so dazzled by the lifestyle she represented. I thought being accepted by her family meant I had finally made it." His therapy journey revealed patterns stemming from our parents' divorce, particularly his fear of abandonment and deep-seated belief that he needed to earn love through achievement or sacrifice. These revelations helped him build healthier boundaries and recognize red flags in relationships. What surprised us both was how many people reached out after hearing our story. Brothers and sisters of friends who had experienced similar manipulation by partners. Colleagues who had been financially exploited by romantic interests. Each story followed a similar pattern: isolation from loved ones, financial entanglement, and a gradual erosion of self-worth. Inspired by these conversations, Jason and I started a monthly support group called Relationship Red Flags, an informal gathering where people could share experiences and learn to recognize manipulation tactics. What began as 6 people in my living room grew to over 30 members meeting at a local community center. "I never thought something so painful would turn into something so meaningful," Jason admitted during our 3rd meeting after a participant tearfully thanked him for sharing his story. "If even one person avoids what I went through, it was worth it." His relationship with Megan continued to blossom, built on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. Unlike Tiffany, who had wanted to remake Jason into her ideal partner, Megan appreciated him for exactly who he was: dad jokes, science fiction obsession, and all. "She asked me yesterday if I wanted to meet her parents," he told me over lunch one afternoon, looking both excited and nervous. "They're coming to town next weekend." "That's a big step," I observed. "How do you feel about it?" "Good, actually. They're elementary school teachers who live in a small town in Maine. They're bringing homemade blueberry jam and want to go to the science museum." He laughed. "Quite a change from the Blackwells and their country club dinners. Are you worried about, comparing them?" I asked carefully. He considered this, then shook his head. "Tiffany's family had wealth and connections, sure. But Megan's family has something the Blackwells never did: genuine happiness. When she talks about them, her face lights up. She's not trying to impress anyone or maintain some image. That's worth more than all the Blackwell millions." My own life had taken positive turns as well. The leadership I demonstrated during the Blackwell situation caught the attention of senior management at my company. When a challenging client required someone with strong boundaries and clear communication skills, I was tapped to lead the project. You handled a fraudulent family situation with more grace than most people could muster, my director explained when offering me the promotion. If you can navigate that while maintaining your professionalism, you can handle anything our clients throw at us. The promotion came with a substantial raise, ironically almost exactly the $50,000 the Blackwells had tried to extract from me. I used part of it to take a long-postponed vacation and invested the rest, building the financial security I had worked so hard for. More importantly, the experience taught me valuable lessons about setting boundaries and trusting my instincts. I had sensed something was off about Tiffany from the beginning, but had ignored my concerns to support Jason. Now I knew that true support sometimes meant speaking uncomfortable truths, even at the risk of temporary conflict. As we sat in our parents' backyard that autumn evening, sharing stories and reconnecting as a family, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing during the tumultuous wedding planning months. "You know what's funny?" Jason said, refilling our wine glasses. "If you had told me 6 months ago that my canceled wedding would be the best thing that ever happened to me, I would have thought you were crazy. But here we are." "Here we are," I echoed, raising my glass. To dodging bullets and finding better paths. To siblings who save you from yourself, Jason added with a grateful smile. Our mother leaned forward, her expression curious. "Whatever happened to the Blackwells? Any fallout from their scheme?" "Tiffany got engaged again 3 months later," Jason replied without bitterness. "To a hedge fund manager whose family apparently passes their social standards." "And the wedding fraud?" our father asked. Let's just say that when several victims compare notes and have documentation, even wealthy families prefer to make quiet restitution rather than face potential charges, I explained. The money wasn't the point, though. It was about making sure they couldn't do this to anyone else in our circle. As darkness fell and we moved inside for dessert, I reflected on how differently things might have turned out. If I hadn't discovered the fraud, Jason might now be trapped in a marriage built on manipulation and deceit. I might be facing financial ruin from debts I never agreed to take on. The Blackwells would have continued their pattern of using wealth as a weapon. Instead, we had emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected, not just to each other, but to a community of people learning to recognize and resist toxic relationships. The wedding that never happened had ultimately given us gifts far more valuable than anything on a registry. Later that night, as Jason and I walked back to our childhood bedrooms, he paused in the hallway. "Sam, I never properly thanked you," he said seriously. "Not just for saving me from a terrible marriage, but for never giving up on me even when I was being a complete idiot." "That's what siblings do," I replied simply. "We see each other through the good and bad decisions. We tell the truth when no one else will." He hugged me tightly. "I promise I'll do better at listening to you the next time you tell me my girlfriend is a manipulative fraud." "Deal," I laughed. "Though maybe aim for one who isn't?" "Working on it," he promised with a smile. Looking back now, I realize that sometimes the most painful experiences become our greatest teachers. The Blackwell wedding debacle taught us about boundaries, self-worth, and the true meaning of family. It showed us that real relationships aren't built on social status or financial transactions, but on mutual respect and genuine care. And that lesson was worth far more than any $50,000 deposit. Have you ever had to stand up to someone manipulating a loved one? What red flags do you look for in relationships? Share your stories in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life experiences. Remember, sometimes the happiest endings come from the courage to walk away from the wrong situations. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps anyone facing similar challenges to find their strength and voice.